Spoilers, by the way, but hey guys, Magnus Robert here, bringing you another Dead Walking Dead character video. And today, we have another long one, that being on Jadis Stokes, aka Anne, leader of the Scavengers, and later warrant officer to the CRM, lover of Gabriel Stokes, chronic double-crosser, and queen of rocking a
haircut.
Now, some of you may be thinking, Magnus, this character died in The Ones Who Live, so why are you covering her in the TV series profiles? Well, I set this rule up when I did my Madison Clark profile, that if a character is introduced in one show and dies in another, the original TV show that they were introduced in will be the identity of their profile. And Jadis, of course, was first introduced in the main series. Also, please note, I'm calling her Jadis throughout the video and not Anne. It makes it easier. So, Jadis is of course female. She is played by Pollyanna McIntosh. She is mid-30s in Season 7 and mid-40s in The Ones Who Live, and she first appeared in New Best Friends. Before the outbreak, Jadis was an art teacher. She brought her class to the Smithsonian once in Washington, D.C. She frequented the local dump looking for things to paint on like metal sheets and fabrics. Back then, the dump was just a place where trash was laid out on flat land. When the outbreak began, Jadis went back to the dump and met other people there. She claimed she was there pretty much from the start. Her group began to grow to over 200 people. They converted the trash that was laid out flat and turned the trash into heaps. Her house was this sweet-ass storage container converted into a mini home. She set up solar panels in order for the group to have power too. Despite her name being Anne, she renamed herself to Jadis, finding the name gave her strength. She became the leader of the Scavengers and decided that they were going to live by the motto, "We take, we don't bother." They spend a lot of time painting, sculpting, and making all sorts of art. Jadis at some point made a cool cat statue. She created a unique way of speaking, a form of broken English, resembling kind of how like Yoda speaks in Star Wars. She believed that theatre would bond her group and separate them from everyone else. At some point, a group member called Winslow died, and Jadis turned him into this walker weapon, and she designed other walkers into weapons too. Winslow was placed at the bottom of the up, which basically was like an arena that clearly others had fought in to try and prove themselves to her and her group, although all the people to fight Winslow before Rick did not do it successfully, and at least one person was killed. They found a boat of supplies on a lake, but didn't risk the dangers of getting it, so instead they staked it out waiting for another survivor to take the risk instead. And they waited for that to happen for a long time. Jadis and her people were one day approached by a CRM member, an advanced civilization far away, who proposed a resource exchange. If Jadis and her group came across other survivors, they would hold these people and hand them to the CRM to get supplies. The CRM had two designations of people: A's, which were to be bitten before being traded as they were leaders and considered dangerous to the CRM's leadership, or B's, which are your everyday average survivors, which are traded to the CRM for their labour. Eventually, she had her people construct a helipad in the junkyard for the CRM to land and pick up these people. Before she's introduced, off screen, she found Heath in his RV. She and her people kidnapped Heath, took his RV, leaving a mysterious PPP card. They then traded Heath with the CRM in exchange for supplies. It's unsure if he was traded as an A or a B. After Tamiel found a group that took the supplies from the boat and followed those people home, and then also followed the people who took the boat supplies from them, aka the Saviours, she then returned to the heaps with Gabriel and Alexandria's pantry supplies. Jadis was intending to trade Gabriel with the CRM for supplies, but eventually, Rick and his group track her and her people down from the boat. Jadis's people surround Rick and his group and bring them back into the heaps. In Season 7, Jadis is first seen as she reveals herself, asking who is the leader of Rick's group. Tamiel pushes Rick to the center stage and he introduces himself. Jadis tells the leader, "We own your lives now. Do you want to buy them back? And if they have anything to trade." Rick wants to see Gabriel first, so Jadis nods to Tamiel to bring him forth. Jadis explains she knows the boat supplies were taken by the Saviours, so she took their food and Gabriel. Rick explains they have nothing to exchange and describe their situation with the Saviours, and that the Saviours will attack her and her people if they hurt Rick and his people. Rick proposes Jadis joins him in fighting the Saviours. Jadis simply says no. She signals Gabriel to be taken away and her people begin to attack Rick's group. Gabriel takes Tamiel hostage at knife point, stopping the violence, and Jadis tells him to get away from her. Gabriel points out the Saviours have a lot of supplies. She likes the sound of that, so signals her people to stop. Jadis tells Gabe to get away from Tamiel and asks him to continue. The deal of taking the Saviour's stuff after the war sounds good to Jadis, but she wants something now. Gabriel asks what do they want exactly, and Jadis tells Tamiel and Brion to show Rick to the upper pub. She then takes Rick up there, along with her two right hands. She explains to Rick her group's motto, and tells him that things have gotten harder because sometimes they find rotten food inside of cans. Jadis then reflects that things are changing, so maybe it's time for her group to change too. Jadis tells Rick she needs to see his worth, so pushes him into the Winslow pit. She watches Rick struggle and fight Winslow, but he's able to beat him. Rick then asks if she believes him now, and she simply throws down a rope. Rick climbs back up, and Jadis tells Rick that in exchange for helping them fight, she wants guns. Lots of them. They climb down from the upper pub, and she asks Rick if he's sure they'll win. Rick assures her that they will. She wants half of the Saviour's goods after the battle, but Rick says a third plus Alexandria's pantry supplies. She says half. Rick doesn't budge on a third. She proposes a third, but they keep the pantry stuff. He still doesn't budge, so she suggests half of the jarred pantry items and a third of the Saviour's stuff after the battle. Jadis tells Rick to say yes to her deal, and he agrees, reminding him that she needs the guns too. She shakes his hand and tells him that she waited by that boat for a long time, so wants guns and jars in return. Rick asks about Winslow, and then what exactly was going to happen with Gabriel, but Jadis simply tells him to go, because the deal will expire soon. She walks off, dropping to Rick that her name is Jadis. Some hours later, Jadis was annoyed to find that Rick had stolen her cat statue. Days later, Rick returns to the heaps with 63 guns. Jadis inspects them, asking if they're all operational. Rick says they are, but they need cleaning. Tamiel is offended by Rick expecting them to clean them. Silly Rick, they live in the dump after all. Jadis wants to just know if they're definitely operational. Michonne reveals exactly how many are there, and Jadis is mad. It's not enough, and they need twice as more. Rosita wants to kill the deal, but Jadis is like, no, our deal is still on. Rick wants to keep 10 in order to find more. They bargain with each other. Jadis offers 5, and then 6, but Rick doesn't budge on either of those numbers, sticking with the number 10. Jadis then goes up to 9, and the cat statue back. Out of nowhere, Rick demands that they keep 20 guns. They get to keep the cat statue, and they will get Jadis more guns. He orders her to say yes, and Jadis, for some reason, agrees to this ludicrous counter-offer, affirming if he brings more guns, she'll help to fight. However, it's my belief that Jadis was actually really offended by this offer, because off-screen after this, she locates the Saviours, knowing where they are, obviously because Tamiel had followed them back after they took the boat supplies. They had a meeting, and Jadis revealed that Rick and friends were attempting to rebel. She made a deal with Negan. She'll help stop Alexandria's rebellion in return for 12 people, with the intentions of trading those people with the CRM. Also off-screen, Rick delivers the Oceanside guns to Jadis and her people, and she pretends to agree to fight his fight. Eventually, Jadis arrives at Alexandria with all of her people. She meets Rick and Michonne and remarks on Alexandria, Rick telling her that she's a part of it now. She affirms they take and they don't bother, but maybe there is now another way. Jadis confirms Michonne is with Rick and then demands that she has sex with him after the battle is done. They don't answer and walk away. Jadis seems a bit mad. Jadis helps to prepare, but secretly she has someone in her group disarm all the explosives. She gets into position next to Rick on the platform closest to the gate, pretending the plan is going ahead. Eugene arrives, gives a little speech, and Rick motions to Rosita to blow him and the trucks up, but it doesn't happen. Jadis then stands up and holds Rick at gunpoint. She holds him there as Negan approaches and gives a little speech. Jadis explains to Rick that Tamiel followed Negan's people and she made a better deal. Negan continues his speech and lets a zombie Sasha out the box. This allows Alexandria a chance to fight back, killing Jadis' people. But Jadis' sights remain on Rick. When Rick gives her the eyes, she says no. Jadis tells Rick to get down the platform, but he proposes another deal. She shoots him in the side and kicks him off the platform. She then leads him to Negan and the Saviors, where they have Carl on his knees. Rick stops so Jadis touches his wound to get him to move. She then gets him to kneel next to his son. Negan disses the garbage people and Jadis affirms her deal is for 12 people, but Negan says 10 people instead and gives her a hard stare. She then accepts. God, Jadis. She watches Negan taunt and berate Rick, and Rick then be defiant against Negan. Negan then goes to kill Carl, but Shiva shows up out of nowhere, along with the Kingdom and the Hilltop forces. As the gunfire begins, Jadis retreats with Brion. She signals him to fire a flare to signal her people to leave, and they all head back to the heaps. In Season 8, some days later, Jadis does some naked arts and crafts, making another cat statue as she watches her people take scrap out of a car. She then hears a knock on her community's entranceway. She signals her people to open it. Jadis must then go get changed quickly as Rick is brought into the circle of her people. She meets with Rick in the circle and confirms he's alone. She remarks she shot him and is wondering why is he back. He wants another deal, and Jadis doesn't understand, because they shot him, killed his people, but Rick says, you grazed me, and we also killed your people. Rick announces they need each other, and he could have killed them if he wanted to. Jadis bites back, pondering if Rick's alone, he must need them to save him. Ha ha ha. Rick, though, he just pulls out some blurry-ass Polaroids and waves them about, saying, the saviors are finished. Jadis then inspects them as he asks her to switch sides again, or he'll destroy them. He continues to ask, is that a yes or a no, Jadis? And Jadis hits him with the no, and has her people hold him in a trailer, stripping him of his clothes. She spits a truth bomb, though, telling Tamiel that Rick talks too much. She then marks his container with the letter A, deciding that Rick will be traded with the CRM, and in the process, he will be getting bitten. Sometime after, Jadis and her people open the container as a man sketches Rick. Rick repeats his offer, but Jadis just snaps a picture of him with her old-ass camera. She changes the bulb and tells Rick to turn, and takes another picture, and then another. Once the sketch artist is done, they begin to close the container. Jadis telling Rick that she wants to sculpt him after he's killed, but doesn't clarify the fact that she is going to be killing him. She soon decides it's time to infect Rick and has one of her people bring him forth. She accompanies another member who has one of her moulded walkers on a stick. Jadis tells Rick it's time for after, and as a man goes to infect him. However, Rick overpowers the two men, Jadis shouting for them to subdue him. Rick Dickie Doodog Grimes is able to rip the head off the walker with the stick still attached, and then attacks Jadis. She tries to shoot Rick, but doesn't, and Rick forces her to the ground and puts her face next to the severed zombie head. Rick declares he's walking out, and if they don't join him, they all will die. Jadis calls off her people to put their weapons down, and agrees to switch to Rick's side once again. She gets up and asks what happens after she joins him. Rick tells her the sanctuary is overrun, and needs her help to end the war. Jadis wants all the Saviour's stuff after the war, but Rick offers up a fourth. Jadis wants half, Rick affirms a fourth. Jadis says, okay, a fourth, but after I get to sculpt you naked. Rick says, nah, take my binds off and give me my clothes back. Jadis agrees to that, and also a fourth. God, she's a terrible negotiator, isn't she? Jadis then travels with her people and Rick to the sanctuary in a truck. They sneak around the outskirts, and Jadis notices as Rick comes across the bodies of the scouts. Despite them being dead and the herd surrounding the building now being dispersed, Jadis marches with her people and Rick to attack. Jadis remarks how it looks different to the pictures, and suddenly they're all shot at. She then flees back to the truck and the heaps along with her people, leaving Rick alone at the sanctuary, being shot at. She goes back to painting, but one day Simon shows up at her home, interrupting her cat paintings. The scavengers raise their guns to the Saviours, but Simon tries to calm them all down, saying they're friends, and Jadis confirms that that is true. Simon asks for an apology for Jadis helping Rick and coming to their home armed, but Jadis lies and says there was no deal with Rick. They were simply bringing him to the Saviours, but then the Saviours shot at them. Simon calls bullshit, but it doesn't matter because the goodwill of Negan will spare them as long as they stick with the former deal and hand over their weapons. Jadis agrees to this measure and has her group hand them over. Simon compliments her cat painting, and she tells him she didn't learn this skill, she came to know it. Simon asks why the dump, and Jadis claims it's theirs. He questions the solar panels and the helipad. What was this place? Jadis simply says, a dump. Jadis then clarifies if their deal now stands, but Simon still wants that apology, with remorse. Jadis unconvincingly claims there is remorse, but Simon responds by shooting Brion dead. Damn. Jadis tries to say there is remorse again, but Simon then shoots Tamiel dead. Damn. Simon asks for the apology to be said again, but Jadis punches him into the ground and screams, there is remorse, you son of a bitch. Simon still doesn't believe her and orders his men to massacre all of Jadis's people. Jadis then watches in horror as all of her people are shot dead by Simon's lackeys. Jadis runs away as her people are being gunned down and hides one of her people's bodies in order for her to be able to use his pool of blood and pass it off as her own. And my god, does she do a good job of playing dead. Jeez. Gary runs over and guns one of her people down. He notices her and spits on her. He tells her it wasn't her game and she shouldn't have played. Gary then runs off and Jadis blinks finally. After the saviors leave, she gets up and takes off her clothes, but leaves on a little nightgown that's on underneath. Jadis then watches her zombified people while sitting on a heap of trash. She sees Rick enter and decides to now drop her Yoda speak. She explains it was the saviors that did this and tells Rick and Michonne that they can get out how they came in. She talks about what this place was before and how she used to come to the dump before the outbreak began, remarking the whole place was a canvas and her people were the paint, and how her and her group became something new, their own special world apart from everyone else. Rick blames her for getting her people killed. He prepares to leave and Jadis grabs a chair asking if she can come with. Rick says nope. Jadis though rushes to try and leave with him and Michonne. She begs him to let her get out, but he instead fires a shot above her head. Jadis is trapped and runs away from her zombified friends. She eventually goes to the trash grinder and begins to attract her zombie friends to her. She turns the machine on and releases the chain, and she watches as all of her zombified group get crushed by the trash grinder. She stares, absolutely devastated that her people were slaughtered, especially sad about Breon and Tamiel. Once they're all turned into paste, she turns off the machine and lays down. She then retrieves a CRM provided applesauce can and chugs that baby down. Jadis begins travelling in a car, and off screen she just so happens to stumble across Negan, exiting a building after fighting with Rick. She knocks him out and puts him in her car and drives off. Negan awakes mid-drive to Jadis holding him at gunpoint. As she drives him back to the heaps, he laughs and says, "Oh shit," but she simply tells him to shut up and knocks him out again. Jadis returns to him to the heaps, tying him to a sled with wheels and leaving him in a container. She heads inside of her sweet-ass crib to pack, because at some point she called the CRM telling them that she has an A in exchange for moving to their city. Anyway, she readies herself to confront Negan and stands over him with Lucille. She then drags him out as Negan is puzzled by what's going on. She waits for the chopper to arrive and burns salt to rid the smell of her dead friends, planning to add Lucille to that fire. Negan comments on the smell and then admits he didn't order the death of all of her people but owns the mistake and apologises for it, but claims he can help her get her purpose back. Jadis then almost caves his head in. Eventually, her time to kill Negan timer goes off and she goes to get another one of her walker contraptions. Negan shouting he wants to talk about it. She wheels it over, but Negan was able to grab a gun and a flare and shoots at Jadis, threatening to burn her pictures of her community with the flare. He demands they have a chat and Jadis agrees and asks him to leave the pictures alone. He questions her method of killing people, but she tells him this is also a people are a resource situation. She begs him to put the flare away, claiming he took her world away from her and those pictures are all she has left. Negan then talks about Lucille, his wife, and what the bat represents to him. Jadis' watch goes off again and the CRM chopper arrives. Jadis gets behind her walking contraption and charges at Negan. She wrestles him for the flare and gets it off him, but it falls into a puddle, being extinguished. She then grabs another flare, but it isn't quick enough as the chopper doesn't see her and flies away. She goes to burn Lucille, but Negan begs her not to, saying all she'll have is ashes. She highlights that she will get to hurt him, but Negan pleads. He didn't do it to her photos, and he can also avenge her people on her behalf. She drops the flare and cries, and frees Negan to look at her photos. He tells her she didn't lose herself, like she said, and asks what the helicopter was all about, and she doesn't respond. Negan then offers her to come with him and follow a new path, but Jadis rejects it. Negan then leaves her be. A few days later, Jadis is reading when Morgan knocks on her door. She opens it with a gun and lets him in. Morgan tells Jadis that she can head back to Alexandria. She questions why, and he tells her that Rick is building a future and needs her there. Jadis asks for his name and then tells him her real name, Anne. I'm still going to be calling her Jadis though. Jadis agrees to go to Alexandria and tells Morgan they can go as soon as she grabs her things, but Morgan tells her he's going to stay here. She points out that he just said everything was about people, but he declares he can't, whatever that means. Nevertheless, Jadis travels to Alexandria and joins the community. In between season 8 and 9, she becomes a valued member of the community and begins to get closer to Gabriel Stokes, although she is not trusted by anyone else other than Rick and the priest. She was commissioned by Maggie at some point to paint a picture of Glenn, as well as Herschel, Beth, and others. She told Rick and the others about the possibility of seeds being at the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. And because of this information, Rick and the others decided to organise a scavenging mission there. In season 9, Jadis is first seen travelling with the others to head to the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. After Rick clears the dead at the door, they head inside. Rick instructs everyone to look for their items and circle back here when they're done. Jadis stares at the banners. She heads down to the basement of the museum with the others. Gabriel kills a walker that falls on an evolutionary chart, and Jadis comments she likes how it looks. They carry on searching, and they find seeds, and Rick commends her for being right. Jadis then explains how she knew there would be seeds here. She begins to pack them all away, and then she's seen later helping to pull ropes to get the wagon down the stairs. They get it to safety, but the glass shatters as they are trying to get the plough across, and Ezekiel almost dies. Jadis helps to pull him to safety. Outside, Jadis and Gabriel get on their cart with the plough and ride off home, with the others following them. Soon, they come across a fallen bridge that is blocking their passage home. Rick instructs Jadis and Gabriel to go home to Alexandria, which they do. A week or so later, Jadis joins the bridge construction crew and is seen walking around the camp with Tara. After working off-screen, she gets lunch with Gabriel. Whilst on her break, she draws a picture of Gabriel's organist. She asks if it looks accurate, and Gabriel confirms it is and tells her she's talented. She says she enjoys it and it makes her feel like she's one of them. Jadis comments that only he and Rick trust her and see her as one of the group, and Gabriel tells her the others will come around, but Jadis is skeptical. The priest adds that Rick is good at reaching out, and Jadis strokes his hand saying Rick isn't the only one. Gabriel tells her that's his job, being there, and he removes his hand from her. When a herd attacks the labour camp, Jadis rushes to help and kills the dead to try and rescue Aaron and the others. At night, she and Gabriel sit out in the woods, and Gabriel points out that sound they hear is frogs mating. Jadis laughs, saying it's a strange thing to know, and asks him who the woman was that she was drawing. Gabriel thinks it's unfair that his past is fair game and hers isn't, but she tells him he's welcome to ask her about her past too, just not her secrets. She asks if the woman she was drawing was a forbidden lover perhaps, dispels this idea, saying it was simply his organist and he cared for her but lost her. Jadis seems to think Gabriel has to remain celibate, but his denomination allows marriage, so he doesn't. Jadis then rubs his thigh and asks him what is stopping him. Are you afraid? And suddenly, Gabriel kisses Jadis, but he breaks it and says he's supposed to be on watch. She unbuckles his belt and tells him to watch. Then, off screen, they get it on. Later that night, Jadis is on watch on a crane and designs a little frog trinket. Likely she's making it for Gabriel. Aww. She then hears and sees a helicopter and looks on, concerned. Off screen, she abandons her watch in order to investigate. The next day, Jadis is at the camp as Justin's body is discovered and watches the fight occur. She holds her gun ready when Alden speaks up and is punched. The Saviours want guns. Daryl says no, and Norris ponders that Jadis could have been the one who killed Justin, Regina adding in revenge for Simon's massacre. Jadis watches as DJ grabs an axe and tensions rise. Jadis' new man steps in front of her to protect her from the crowd of Saviours, but Ricky Dicky Doodog Grimes rides in and stops all the commotion. Jadis then wanders off, pissed that she was accused, and she gets water. Gabriel asks her if she's alright, and she denies any involvement in the murder. Gabriel reveals that he lied to Rick to cover for her as she abandoned her watch and asks if she saw anything while she was out there. She ignores it and says she needs her rest, walking off, and he asks again, and she wonders if he thinks she's hiding something. He doesn't answer, and Jadis then storms off. At night, Jadis returns to the heaps. She scouts around her former camp and finds her old secret filing cabinet, which contains her radio given to her by the CRM. She turns it on and speaks into it, saying it's Jadis and she knows they're in range. Suddenly she hears something behind her, but doesn't see the source. The CRM man, who's called Calm, asks her if she has an A or a B, and she asks the CRM if they took the missing saviors. He says no and asks if she has an A or a B. She says neither, it's just her, but she's paid her share. But he points out everyone she's traded beforehand was compensated with supplies. Calm says he wants an A tomorrow. She then hears Gabriel and holds him at gunpoint. He asks, "Who were you talking to? And were the others right about you having something to do with Justin's death?" She denies it, but doesn't tell him who she was talking to. Gabriel wants the truth and figures that Jadis traded people, and she admits she was planning to do that with him and Rick in order to get supplies. She tells him she tried not to do it, but it always ended up happening. She pleads with him. "I tried to integrate with Alexandria, but I'm suspect number one every time something goes wrong." She points out Gabe was the only one to stand up for her when all the saviors came at her. Jadis asks Gabriel to come with her. It's a faraway place, but they can go together. They hold hands, and Jadis adds he can't tell anyone, though, that he's going. But he has to also trust her and help her trade an A to the CRM so they can have a wonderful life. Gabriel says no, he has to now tell Rick. And Jadis is heartbroken that he's not choosing her. She replies she always thought he was a B, but it turns out he is an A, and hits him across the head, knocking him out. She ties the priest up, ready to be bitten and traded. She cools his head and kisses him, ready to have him now get eaten. Gabriel tells her she doesn't have to do this, but she tells him she does, as there is only one place left for her to go, and Gabriel is the price. She rejects the idea she's changed, and she expresses she tried, but she's not like him. She's unable to move on from her past. He tells her he's better because of her, but she rebuts it was all for nothing, taking the bucket off the zombie's head. Gabriel then tells Jadis he forgives her as she lowers the walker. This overwhelms her, and she can't go through with it, pulling the zombie off him. She then decides to knock him out again. She unties him and leaves him in a container, leaving a note with him that reads, "If you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. I need to go fast." She takes the RV that she once stole from Heath with the intention of getting her way to the CRM via force. Eventually the RV breaks down, she tries to start the engine and beats the RV when it doesn't start. Calm, the CRM man, radios her to confirm her location and status of her A. She gives her location and lies, saying that her A is ready to be transported. He comments he knows she aborted the last pickup and is aware her group are no longer in the landfill. She confirms it's not a trick and she is desperate to leave. She gets out, confirming she'll be ready, walking the rest of the way. She makes her way to the clearing and sees the bridge explosion from afar. The helicopter comes and she readies herself to attack them, but then she sees an injured Rick Grimes washed up in the riverbank. She radios the pilot saying she has a B, she never had an A, and asks him to help Rick. She puts down her gun, saying it's not a trick, not anymore. She's simply trying to save a friend who saved her. She demands to know if they have a deal. And off screen, Calm accepts and gets Rick hooked up in the back of the chopper, bringing Jadis too. In the helicopter, Jadis tells Rick he's safe and he's going to be okay because the CRM are going to save him. They then take off in the chopper and eventually head all the way to Philadelphia, aka the Civic Republic Military's city. In between the kidnapping of Rick and World Beyond Season 2, Jadis arrives at the Civic Republic Military in Philadelphia and handed over Rick. This granted her a ticket to a new life. She kept up the lie that Rick was a B and not in actual fact an A to prevent him from being put in the research labs. She had safety but wanted something more. She also lied, telling them her surname was Stokes, stealing said surname from Gabriel. After learning a now consignee Rick would eventually be going on his tour to the city, Jadis places herself there ready for him, waiting for a month in order to talk to him, asking for a napkin when he passes, also offering him a fry. She highlights a fancier place and begins walking. Rick follows her. Jadis explains how her and the scavengers first came across the CRM, and she explains she's been waiting here for a while so that they could talk. joking the fries are good, but the onion rings are better. She comments how the CRM keep asking her what to ask him. She was hoping Rick would say he's looking for someone to follow, adding he can talk to her because the CRM can't operate in the city and won't be able to spy on them. Rick berates her for bringing him here, but she points out she could have left him there to die, but she owed him. He questions why isn't she a consignee, and Rick figures giving them him allowed her to skip it. Jadis comments on her intention to sign up to the military and move up the ranks, saying this place has a 500-year plan, ensuring a future for the children. Rick demands he wants to go home, but Jadis tells him to follow his bliss, and reminds him she did save his life. Rick storms off, and Jadis tells him he's welcome. Some days or weeks later, then, Jadis goes to the barber, and she goes to get a classic
shit haircut.
After this, Jadis joined the CRM military and began to rise the ranks. She was trained by Jennifer Malik, aka Hook, who taught her what it's worth fighting for. At some point, she was introduced to Jennifer's husband Dennis too and befriended him. She learned about the experiments such as the ones involved in Project Votus, which researches reanimation. Also, she was made aware of the Echelon briefing via Major General Beale, who informed her about the attacks on Omaha and the campus colony, and the eventual attack on Portland too, in order to preserve supplies and allow the Civil Republic military to thrive in the future. She did meet Rick at least a few times throughout this period and heard about his intentions to try and escape, but she didn't worry too much because she knew he couldn't, and she was right. Eventually, she rose to warrant officer and was given a lot of freedom. One day, she was able to slip away from the CRM and secretly met with Gabriel in the woods whilst he was filling up his canteen. She says it's okay and that she's alone, and Gabriel hugs her, asking if she's going to be coming back. She tells him she's just here to see him and he can't tell anyone. Gabriel reminisces on why she left and mentions Rick died trying to bring them all together. Jadis discovering that they all think that Rick is dead. Gabriel asks Jadis for forgiveness for not believing in her, and she asks what about the people who can't forgive you, and how do you live with that? She comments she can't talk to her new people about the stuff she did without revealing too much compromising information, and agrees to what he says, telling him she forgives him. They continue their little date, and then they decide to meet again at the same place on the same day every year. At some point after this, she was informed about the situation with Hope, Iris, Elton and Silas travelling to the research centre in New York, and hears that Jennifer Malik was in trouble too, but made it out. She was assigned to the research centre to replace Elizabeth Kublik in order to conduct a security audit. She was given Elizabeth's office and was given Barker to hand over to the research labs. In The Walking Dead World Beyond Season 2, 6 years after leaving with Rick in that helicopter, Jadis travels to the CRM Research Center with Barker, all the way from Philadelphia to New York. Lila asks about her test subject, and Jadis replies that he's here as requested. Lila remarks, "He's a soldier?" and tells Jadis that she knows it's her last chance to get her experiments right, and tells Jadis to inform Elizabeth that she will. Jadis, though, tells her that Elizabeth is being stationed in the city now, indefinitely, and tells her from now on, she'll be answering to her, lifting up her helmet to reveal her face and her
shit haircut.
She later finds Jennifer Malik, aka Hook, who I'm just going to be calling Hook by the way, in the corridor and calls to her. She explains to her that she's doing a security audit and comments that they've been through too much together for her not to call Jadis by her first name. Hook tells her she doesn't just have to be a military cop, and Jadis acknowledges that she could be a soldier, but likes looking for corruption. She says that they should catch up and hopes she doesn't have to arrest her. She highlights how she knows about the kids, Hope and all that, and is trying to see the whole picture. When Hook asks what she sees, Jadis tells her that she sees the most dedicated soldier in the CRM, her mentor. Jadis jokes Hook should swing by and have a drink, and she might even let Hook call her a bitch again. Jadis tells her she's glad to see her, but she has weak links to find, and walks off. When the power goes out later that night, Jadis tries to radio Hook, but she doesn't respond to her calls. Jadis calls to see Hook in her new office and drinks looking out the window. Hook enters and is surprised she used the comms just to get her to come drink. Jadis says she just cares about her friends. She pours Hook a drink and shows her a seat. Jadis talks about her former group, the Scavengers, and how she lost them because she made the wrong alliances, and how after that she gave the CRM something valuable to be able to get her new life. She talks about her first years in the CRM and how it's her purpose to create a new era on this planet. Jadis informs Hook that Elizabeth told her to keep an eye on her and wonders if Hook has formed bonds with the people that she was spying on, but says maybe she's got it all wrong. She tells Hook that the name Jadis isn't her real name, but it gave her strength, and admits Hook is stronger than her, and they could help to prove to Elizabeth that she's not Hook and is Jennifer. Hook asks if she's under investigation, and Jadis says she's investigating a few things. She wants Hook to help her by talking up how wonderful Jadis is, in order to help Jadis rise the ranks and get that promotion by the end of the year. Jadis admits Hook has done a lot, but there is always more she can do. At some point, she was also informed about the security breach, finding a vial was taken from the lab during the breach, and she interviewed Lila, getting her story about it. After Silas is found lurking around the research centre and is detained, Jadis goes to visit him, noting that he has strong feet. She asks if he knows why they took his boots, but theorises it wouldn't stop him from running away as he has some absolute clompers. She introduces herself and says he wasn't where he was supposed to be and asks if he likes the facility one. He replies, yeah, but it's like a junkyard, and she comments, ho, that's not a bad thing. She thinks he's different like her and asks why was he outside the terminal without clearance. He lies, and then Jadis tells her officers to bring in Dennis. Dennis is surprised to see her, and Jadis says she's here checking on some issues, saying Dennis's wife Hook didn't call Jadis by her first name, adding that Dennis seems to make soldiers now, asking if Silas could be a good one. Dennis questions why he wasn't informed about his capture sooner, but Jadis explains why with all the security breaches and all that, and then wonders if Dennis believes Silas's lies. He backs Silas up though, and leaves with the teen. Jadis then asks again, would Silas make a good soldier? Dennis thinks maybe, but Jadis gives a warning, saying if either of them make her regret her decision to let Silas go, both will regret it, telling Silas he won't get another chance, and then getting him his boots. Hours after, Jadis sent an agent to get Hook, and she meets with Hook asking her for her assistance. She wants to know what's going on, but Jadis tells Hook she looks tired. She tells Hook that there was a security breach last night during the power outage with sensitive research material being stolen. She informs her that something valuable was taken and needs Hook's help to get said thing back. They enter the interrogation room to find Leo. Jadis watches as Hook questions Leo about his involvement with Lila, asking Leo if he fell out of love with her. Outside, Jadis questions what Hook thinks, pointing out why did he have dinner with Lila if he has fallen out of love with her. Jadis wonders why Lila's story has matched his, and Hook figures out that she lied to him, and Jadis seems to compliment her detective skills. She then tells a soldier to arrest Lila, declaring they found their conspirator. She questions Leo again, thinking he is working with her, but he denies it. Jadis thinks it's obvious, commenting Hook helped him see that. She adds, Leo told Lila about his daughter's gifts, and she betrayed him and went straight to Elizabeth with that information, telling him he doesn't know this woman. Lila is captured and brought to the interrogation room holding the missing vial. Jadis asks where she found it, and Lila tells Jadis that Leo stole it. Lila continues, saying that she can't hurt Leo because he's too valuable to Project Votus. Lila demands Leo is let go, saying she's about to make a breakthrough in her research. Jadis tells her she makes the right deals on the CRM's behalf and believes Lila is right. She tells Leo he's gonna get away with it again, but he must focus his efforts on the mission. He agrees to it, and replies yes when Jadis asks him if he's motivated. She asks his clarification on what's the mission, and he gives a statement that satisfies her, but simplifies it by saying, it's life versus death, Leo, okay? She orders Felix is let go, Leo is let go, and tells Lila she'd love to see her test subjects, and then share the news with Major General Beale about her break in stopping reanimation for over 8 hours. They head to the research lab to see the progress on Barker. Jadis talking about how long the project has been going on for. They arrive and see that Barker has turned pretty damn quickly, and all of Lila's promises of a breakthrough were lies. Jadis tells Hook to remove the restraints on the walker, and Lila questions what is going on, and Jadis points out that she was sloppy with sensitive research and has already agreed to hand off the baton to what Jadis sees as a more superior scientist. Jadis, along with Hook, then locks Lila in the room with an unrestrained zombie Barker. Jadis then quotes Lila to her, saying, the rat will get tired, but the dead won't, and she watches as Lila is killed by Barker and says, "Wow, what a tragic accident." Hook points out that Jadis all along knew that Lila was covering for Leo, and Hook thinks Jadis used her, and she admits she did use Hook to ensure Leo would replace Lila because she knew the truth all along. Jadis advises that Hook is then debriefed on Project Votus, including the information about the bombings of Omaha and the campus colony and how they now want to do the same to Portland. Hours go by and Jadis talks with some soldiers in her new office. Hook enters, so Jadis dismisses the two men to talk to Hook alone. Hook wants to know more about the briefing, and Jadis informs her they've recovered from the power outage and now have a diagnostic report, and is concerned that Leo is not keeping quiet about what he knows. She wonders if Hook's mother's report about Leo is wrong, and he in fact is not someone who will easily fall in line. She asserts that it's now way past snooping time, and it's time to show Leo what will happen if he steps out of line. She calls Lieutenant Newton and tells him her team is ready if his is. Jadis then marches with her men, but is unable to find Hope and Iris. Jadis inspects Leo's apartment and is informed Leo isn't where he's meant to be. She initiates evacuation of civilian personnel, telling Newton it will show how deep the rot has spread. She is given a report of all those who were evacuated, pointing out there is no sign of the Bennetts or the research staff. She notes it goes further than the Bennetts now, and asks for a full lockdown and sweep of the facility in order to locate them all. Jadis is informed about the Bennetts and the researchers all being locked behind some high titanium doors. She then meets with Brody, a member of the Perimeter, a community that the CRM kind of gives supplies to, and he approaches the security wanting to speak with Elizabeth. She informs Hook about this and how Kubelik has been given CRM supplies to the Perimeter community unauthorized and off the books, and how that community has now become a threat to the CRM safety, and how an intruder that they had shot the previous night was the Perimeter leader Indira's son. Now Brody has told her that the Bennetts and the Perimeter have been working against the CRM. She informs Hook that she sent a team to wipe out the Perimeter and rejects the suggestion of a formal investigation as it would take too much time. She leaves the room but re-enters when hearing a gunshot, seeing that Hook has shot and killed Brody. Jadis asks what the hell did Hook do? And Hook tries to claim that he was a rat trying to blackmail his way into the CRM. Jadis thinks it's impossible Brody could have known that information, but Hook is claiming he was using it to blackmail, and she adds he must have been lying about Indira in order to solve a personal grudge too. Haha, yeah, so maybe we could call off that little genocide you're going to do, Jadis. But she rejects it, saying, well, both he and Indira are rats, I guess, and both were threats. So she speaks to Indira over the radio as Indira begs Jadis to call off the soldiers. She comments how she loves the globe sculpture that Indira made for the research facility. It's beautiful, and she relates her community of artists to Indira's, concluding Indira's vision is nice, but she can't see the bigger picture, so Jadis can't let them live and says sorry. Hook defends them, saying they're valuable research. Jadis, though, tells her men to eliminate all of them. Later, Jadis doesn't hear back from her Perimeter killing team and assumes that they must be dead, and also comments on how she was duped by all the scientists, as the lockdown just gave them more time to escape through some old tunnels. She adds all the research has been wiped, and they're trying to take it with them, now causing a rebellion, adding this could be the world's second end. She plans to head to the tunnel's exits and try to catch the scientists as they leave. She tells her people to eliminate a few scientists and the Bennetts to instill fear into the others, because they've forgotten how good they've all got it. She soon learns that her team of soldiers are being exploded by the scientists, and asks Hook where they could have got those explosives from. Leo then gets on the radio wanting to speak to Jadis. She tells him he might not care about those soldiers, but she does, and he's putting the whole planet at risk right now. Jadis tells him he's crossed a serious line, and she laughs at the fact that he's trying to bargain, but he reveals he has Mason Beale, Major Beale's son. She calls his bluff, but Mason is in fact on the other end of the radio. Jadis wants to know what he wants, and Leo tells her trucks, gas, no tricks. She questions if he's willing to throw away the chance of a cure, but he points out the CRM are all evil, and they'll find a way eventually. Jadis then tries to talk reason to the other scientists, saying there is no progress out there, it's just the dead, but Leo tells Jadis where he wants the trucks and when, and if not, he'll hurt Mason. Jadis tells them, well done for convincing smart people into a suicide mission, and throws her radio away in frustration. Jadis berates Hook as her mission has failed. She was to ensure that Hope knew the importance of the future. Hook points out they're all just mad about the destruction of their home, aka the campus colony. After some of the trucks that Jadis leaves to the scientists drive away, Jadis theorizes that the Bennetts are still there and they want their justice, thinking they're going to try and destroy the facility to stop them from gassing Portland. Jadis is suddenly then informed about 1,000 dead incoming as the patrols were redirected to the tunnels. She demands they're disrupted with charges, saying they could lose everything. She watches the dead approach and learns they've lost significant parts and the disruption charges are not working. Hook wants to go help hold the line, but Jadis tells her, no, you're going to be helping me resolve some business, abandoning the protection of the facility in the process. Jadis is able to catch Felix and the others trying to escape and tells her men to hold fire as Felix holds a gun to Mason. She tells her team they have the Bennetts and asks Felix and the Bennetts to have a little chat on the radio. She wonders how they're all going to do this. Felix says they'll drop off Mason once they're allowed to drive off in their little Humvee. Jadis isn't happy with that as she doesn't trust them. They don't trust her, and she highlights there's us, you, and a big old herd on the way, and she wonders who will blink first. In this exchange, Jadis presents the CRM as a necessary force that makes difficult decisions for the greater good of humanity, justifying the CRM's extreme actions. She empathizes that the CRM's actions, including mass killings and covering up genocides, were preemptive measures taken to preserve the long-term survival of human civilization. Jadis explains that 2 years prior, the CRM's projections indicated that the cities of Omaha, the campus colony, and Portland had become unstable and would soon face a severe famine, leading to the collapse of the Civic Republic's resources. In her view, allowing these populations to die slowly through famine and disease would have eventually endangered the entire world and the main city that the Civic Republic is in, and the death will eventually overtake everything. To prevent this, the CRM made a calculated choice to end the lives of thousands swiftly, which she frames as an act of mercy. This strategy, according to her, ensured the survival of 10,000 children and the greatest minds who could contribute to the scientific progress. Some of these great minds were, of course, Leo. Jadis then claims that the people who died during the CRM's research are basically legends, and that they're going to help ultimately stop the dead from rising. She defends the CRM's right to make these life or death decisions, criticising the younger generation, Iris and her group, for their limited understanding of the larger stakes at play. Jadis portrays the CRM as the backbone of the humanity's survival, framing their controversial actions as the only reason the current world still exists. She dismisses the group's opposition as almost cute, but pathetic and dangerous. Suddenly, walkers attack, and Mason manages to get away. Jadis orders the others are to be shot and killed, but shock! Hook suddenly shoots the soldiers and holds Jadis at gunpoint. Jadis drops her radio and her gun and tells Hook this was a wrong choice. She watches them all escape, leaving Mason behind, and Hook tells Jadis to move. Jadis tells her that Elizabeth was right about Hook and calls her bluff, thinking that Hook would have shot her by now if she wanted her dead, and reinforcements are on the way. Jadis bargains if Hook spares her life, she'll give her 5-10 minutes as a little head start. Mason then screams for help as he is surrounded by some walkers, and Jadis rushes to save the Beale boy, killing the walkers that surround him. However, in this time, Hook is able to drive away. In the next scene, she's at a little base camp and she radios Beale thanking him for the troops that he has provided, but tells him that they should push up the timeline on Portland, saying they're compromised, but assures him she'll get justice and retrieve the scientists. She promises that she'll fix it, saying she really should have been brought here sooner. Jadis then thanks Major General Beale for his trust, saying she will not let him down. At camp, she's told about the helipads being cleared and asks when the disruption charges will be implemented. She wants to retrieve the scientists, asking for the comms to be scrambled even though it will disrupt theirs. She sees it as a calculated risk, but the best way to stop them. She intends to direct the choppers now to airlift the gas to Portland and will wrap everything else up. But then she's told about the C4 that they used to destroy the tunnels. It's the same used at the culling facilities. Realizing that they must have got it from the facility that Dennis is at, she tells her trooper to ready her helicopter, as she knows that Dennis runs the culling outpost where the gas has also been moved to. She hears some excuses from her trooper lady, but just tells her she wants her helicopter to be readied now. Jadis flies over to the facility, and when they land, she exits with some troopers and heads inside. She tells her men to sweep the place and secure the gas containers, but after spotting a truck outside of a warehouse, she sneaks in with her gun drawn. Hook then attacks and knocks her gun out of her hand. Jadis grabs Hook's staff, defiant, but is hit a few times. Jadis gets in some hits before Hook kicks her away. She asks, why did Hook betray them? And Hook wants to fight for humanity, and genocide is not very good, Jadis. Jadis grabs herself a weapon, telling Hook she doesn't appreciate what they have done and what they can do. Hook throws something at Jadis and goes into attack, and then Hook defiantly says this has nothing to do with her mother, who had lost her way, but proclaims that Jadis has always been this evil, pointing out how she used Rick to get into the community. Jadis admits that she did and tells that tale, ending by saying she's doing everything Hook couldn't. She goes to attack her again and Hook calls her a murderer, but Jadis points out the information that Hook gathered when she was a spy in Omaha was used so that they could carry out the attack. They clash again, their weapons being interlocked, and then Jadis uses this opportunity to stab Hook in the chest, telling her it didn't have to be this way as Hook collapses. Jadis asks if she wants her to finish it, and then Hook randomly starts talking about a watch given to her by her father. Jadis then sees there is no watch on her wrist, figuring out this place is about to blow. She asks how much time she has and rushes off. She shouts at her crew, they're rigged to blow, and they're leaving, and they fly off to safety, leaving Hook and the culling facility to blow up along with all the gas that was going to be used to genocide Portland. Jadis then travels back to Philadelphia and does days of debriefing. She also has Silas brought there too, after he is caught killing Dennis. She calls him to a room there and talks about how he shot Dennis in the face. Jadis questions if he knows about his friends being part of the mutiny, but he claims they banished him and were not his friends. Jadis doesn't believe his story and knows Dennis put him up to it, but she says it's okay because he went through with it. He has strength, and that would be good for their military, commenting he'd make a great soldier. She tells him she's going to take him on as her own special project. He tries to convince her he's a CRM loyalist, and she says she knows who he really is, but can't wait to see what he's going to become. They then watch as the training goes on outside, and although Jadis agreed for Silas to be her personal project, we never see Silas and Jadis ever again, so I mean, they just dropped this plot point. She then visits Elizabeth on a park bench in the city and tells her she's sorry for her loss, and explains how she's just arrived back from all that debriefing. Jadis repeats the lie that the team tried to take Hook alive, but she didn't give them a choice. She adds they haven't found the scientists, but they will. Elizabeth reflects that maybe saving humanity was never possible. She tells Elizabeth that survivors don't just become strong, they wait for the strong to become weak. She's sitting here now because she took the moment when she saw the strongest person she'd ever met being vulnerable and used it. And that's exactly what she's doing right here, right now. Jadis gets up as she's joined by some troopers and tells Elizabeth that she's under arrest for treason. Elizabeth protests, but Jadis points out her own daughter was a traitor, and the blame has to be shifted onto someone. Jadis blames everything on Elizabeth, claiming that she did nothing to stop what was happening. Elizabeth is like, I brought you in for this reason, to find out these things, but Jadis bites back saying she suspects Elizabeth brought her in to take the fall. Jadis then preaches and says she can usher in the new world better than her, because she doesn't have friends or children, just her ambition. Elizabeth thinks people will see through Jadis, and Jadis flexes her command of the troopers. Elizabeth thinks Beale will have Jadis' head for this, but Jadis points out that Beale actually signed the arrest warrant. Oops, sorry. She proclaims she won this battle and then says, we are the last light of the world, before walking off as the soldiers escort Elizabeth to the wellness centre where she's kept in custody. God, I'm glad to be done with the world beyond. Some weeks or months after the events of the Will Beyond Season 2, Jadis meets with Gabriel for their second little date. She asks how Michonne is, and Gabriel informs her that she's gone away to help some people. He asks why she said wife when she was talking about Michonne, because she was under the impression that Rick and Michonne were married. And Gabriel talks about how Rick once talked about marrying him and Michonne, and how he had found a ring giving him a sign that they were to be married on the bridge. Jadis remarks that she has been looking forward to their visit, because it makes her feel like who she used to be. She comments that she's doing stuff for the greater good, and some of that stuff has been difficult and cruel. Gabriel points out it's not her if she knows it's wrong, but she shuts him down because it's all about survival. Gabriel asks her for food as Alexandria has just suffered the Whisperer War and the kids are hungry, but Jadis shuts that shit down, saying she can't and she's not even supposed to be there. But her remorse is real. She goes to leave, being a bit annoyed, but Gabriel stops her, asking her to take the ring that he found with her. When she's questioning things, this ring will represent a symbol of faith and love. She then agrees to meet again, same place, same day, next year. In between this and her next meet with Gabriel, Jadis commits some more cruel atrocities in service to the CRM. However, she never gets that promotion that she was after. She remains a warrant officer, despite doing all these actions in service to try and get that damn promotion. She just can't catch a break. She's not doing genocide good enough, goddammit. A year later, she meets Gabriel again, as promised, remarking that she didn't expect him to show up this time. Gabriel comments that the last time he was a bit harsh and doesn't understand her community and is worried about how she's scared of losing that part of herself. She ponders if that good part of her is already gone, and how every year she comes back here and she's done worse things, and she has to live with all the whys and the hows and the blood. Gabriel tells her she can speak to him about what she's done, but Jadis says, I can't, because I'm not here. He tells her she is, and then asks if he can confide in her. Gabriel tells her that he enjoys these days, that he enjoys them so much, and then the two kiss. Now bear in mind, Rosita has only just died. Damn, Gabriel, moving on fast. Gabriel pulls away and asks her to come back with him to Alexandria. Jadis tells him she can't, but he complains, you're unable to tell me anything about this community, other than they hoard supplies. Jadis then questions his logic. Her group isn't evil. They're trying to save people for the future and all that stuff. And Jadis admits that this is her fault. What, Jadis? What's your fault? She says sorry. She came here, made herself vulnerable, and turning him into a loose end. Jadis then knocks Gabriel to the ground and holds a gun to his head, saying she's sorry. Gabriel tells her she's lying to herself because she never truly left, telling her to just shoot him already. Jadis takes his words and instead shoots a walker. She tells him to go, but he tells her she's just found the answer she was looking for, who she is. Is she good? Are you good, Jadis? You are, Jadis. That's the answer you've got. Gabriel tells her that she'll see him again next year and leaves. Sometime after this, Jadis was being yo-yoed back and forth between Philly and the Cascadia forward operating base. Here, she began to develop her art some more, making some paintings of Major Beale, as well as art of Gabriel Stokes. Jadis then learns that Okafor died, killed by a guy called Nat, and that a woman called Dana helped Rick to stop him. Figuring this was Michonne, Jadis decided to write a letter detailing her and Rick's history, outing who Michonne really is, and telling them about Alexandria's safe zone so it can be destroyed in the event of Jadis' death. She hid the note inside a cat statue that she also likely designed whilst being stationed at this base. In The Ones Who Live, Season 1, Jadis watches the interview tape as Michonne pretends to be a woman called Dana. She then lets herself into Rick's room and pours herself a drink. Rick arrives back and she apologises for breaking in, but it is an investigation. She wants to keep it off the books, as they have in the past. She remarks it's been a while and he looks good, commenting how amazing it is that Michonne found Rick. She knows it wasn't Nat who owned that sword because she's familiar with Michonne. Jadis then asserts if he tries to escape with Michonne, she'll make sure that the people of Alexandria will be killed. She's sure she's capable, remarking her hands can't get any bloodier. Jadis has a question for Rick and apologises in advance for the language, but asks Rick, what the fuck are you doing? Jadis remarks Rick wants to kill her, and he promises he will, just not today. Rick wonders why Jadis is throwing herself into this when it has nothing to do with her, but she highlights that her, Rick, and Michonne's fates are now bound, because if Rick and her were the first people to leave, they'd never stop looking for him, and because Jadis will know where he is, she'll have to kill him and everyone else there to hide their arrangement. Jadis assures Rick that upon her death, there's a lovely little file telling the CRM everything they need to know about him and Alexandria, and how the CRM would kill everyone within hours of reading said file. Rick is pissed, Michonne doesn't belong here, but Jadis simply points out that Michonne shouldn't have come, and asks him to promise not to leave, otherwise everyone dies. Rick asks why, and Jadis says security, and also she's thinking about her own career. Rick proposes another deal to Jadis. God, Rick, why'd you do this? And Jadis says nope, because she believes in the CRM, pointing out how Thorne stepped up to defend Michonne from suspicion of being an A. Rick asks why she's threatening him now, and Jadis remarks that him and Michonne together can do anything, and she's a little bit worried. She then takes her booze and leaves. Jadis attends the funeral for Okafor and listens to Beale's speech. Later, Rick informs Jadis that Michonne is gone and she's going to help him cover it up. Jadis questions it and Rick tells her that she made it look like Michonne died trying to escape. Jadis doesn't believe Michonne would just leave without him. She asks Ricky Dicky Doodar Grimes if he still wants to kill her. He says maybe he's dreaming of it, because their fates are bound after all. He goes through what he did to make it look like Michonne died and tells her to lead the investigation and make it a closed case. Jadis agrees to it after she's done what she needs to do at the Cascadia base and warns him there better not be any other blowback. And if he does want to kill her, he's to do it whilst they're nose to nose, reminding him of the file that she has. Jadis wonders if something else is keeping him at the CRM, joking that it could be because of her, because she did save his life after all. And he says, you know, you're a hero, Jadis. You're a hero with a
shit haircut.
An offended Jadis walks away to travel and conduct a security audit at the Cascadia forward operating base. She meets with Rick at the base when he and Michonne travel there and claims she's stationed there now, no more day and halves between here and Philly, suggesting that he could come to her quarters. Jadis highlights Michonne hasn't seen her yet, and when Michonne turns to see Jadis for the first time in years, Jadis jokes, "Oop, she saw me." After a CRM chopper containing Rick and Michonne goes down, Jadis accompanies the reclamation team, finding said chopper in the side of a building. She's in the chopper as she watches the pilot blow up the crashed helicopter to destroy evidence of the CRM, noting that there is also a yellow truck parked outside of the building. Jadis' spidey senses tingle though, and she believes they survived. She flew to the nearest drop point, got a vehicle and went back to that building to find it now rubble, but discovered that that yellow truck is now gone. She then, and yes, this part is stupid as hell, found ramen wrappers and packaging all down the highway, and she used this in order to track and figure out that they're going to Virginia. Eventually, she's able to track down the cabin that they're currently staying at, and she sneaks in at night. She awakes them both at gunpoint, saying morning to the lovebirds, and she orders Michonne to tie Rick to the bed and then herself, which they seemingly do. Rick comments he knows Jadis is alone and she calls him rude. Jadis explains how she knew they were alive and how she found them, but Michonne and Rick comment she should have just killed them when they were sleeping. Jadis reflects on killing Hook and how she didn't really confide in her enough, and she wants to really confide in both Rick and Michonne before killing them. Rick calls bullshit on Jadis being in love with the city and the CRM. She says, "I'm not Anne, I'm Jadis, and I'm a believer," and affirms that she's doing all of this for the Republic, not herself. And also she's worried her involvement with Alexandria could be discovered, thus resulting in her losing her new life. They berate her for stealing Rick, resulting in him not being there for his children, and Jadis thanks them though, as them dying here today means that she can spare Alexandria and spare their children. She remarks they could have made another choice, but this ultimately isn't a loss for them as their kids get to live. She goes to shoot them, but they duck out the way of her gunfire. Rick then throws a bed onto her, and Michonne puts an axe into her. Jadis pulls it out and flees the cabin, bloodied. Jadis gets away in her car, but she's pursued by Rick and Michonne in their ugly-ass truck. They ram Jadis, but Jadis breaks her vehicle and rams them, and then gets in front of them, but they smash into her car again, and send her into a bunch of the dead, and into a tree. She screams, "Fuck!" as she crashes her car. She attempts to get to the helicopter jump point and comes across Red and his family. She says hello and puts her hand up, and they hold her at gunpoint. Jadis says she's not here to hurt them but wants their help, as she's being pursued by dangerous people, offering them access to her community if they assist her get to the jump point. Jadis compliments Tina for being tall, thinking, aha, you can be a Jadis distraction. She heads with her new allies to the National Forest building, but is pursued by Rick and Michonne, who hold Tina at gunpoint, thinking that she's Jadis. And obviously using this, Jadis, Red and Dalton are able to lure Rick and Michonne into a trap. Jadis looks on with her gun out, shouting, "It's 4-on-2, and people are a resource." Rick and Michonne easily disperse of Red and Dalton, and Tina is then randomly devoured. Jadis shoots at the Walking Dead's power couple, but misses, and Rick asks her to surrender so that they can talk, but she comments they'll ambush her and break her bones to find out where the file is. She will live for the cause and die for it too. She shoots at Rick and rushes for better cover, telling them that they're both unstoppable, but it won't save their kids. However, if she dies, their kids will die too. She steps out with her hands up as walkers begin to walk behind her. Michonne shoots the walkers, trying to bite Jadis, but her gun runs out of bullets and Jadis takes a shot at her. Jadis then tells Rick he was on the path and he didn't have to do this, and he was finally feeling the responsibility, and Beale saw it too, revealing Beale was going to give him the echelon briefing and his eyes would be opened to the true size and scope of the CRM, securing Alexandria's safety. But now Rick and Michonne have jeopardized all of that. Jadis tells them she doesn't want to do this, but it is ultimately about keeping your humanity or saving humanity, and she chooses the latter, asking who's going to die, her and everyone at Alexandria, or just you two. Michonne seemingly agrees to Jadis' argument, asking what is it going to be. Rick agrees, Michonne and Rick propose, he goes back to the CRM, and Michonne gets away, sparing them and Alexandria. Jadis likes this deal, but asks why would she trust them, but ultimately agrees to the deal. Rick and Michonne throw out their weapons, and she asks Rick to step closer. He tells her to lay her weapons down, as Michonne's gone off to go get the medkit. A bloody Jadis then stumbles over and puts her gun down. She tells Rick she agreed to their deal because she was a fool to think that she could take both of them out. However, now Michonne is getting the medkit, she can easily kill Rick, and pulls out a second gun and goes to shoot him, telling him she respects him. However, Michonne didn't go far and holds Jadis now at gunpoint. Jadis laughing that they double-crossed her before she could double-cross them. Michonne tells her to drop the gun or she'll kill her. Jadis quips, even if Alexandria is destroyed, and then suddenly a zombie Tina comes out of nowhere, and this happens. Rick kills the zombies, but they have already sunk their teeth into her neck. She feels her neck and reflects on her life, knowing it's now coming to an end. She tells them she's lost everything. Her people, her friends, everyone. She was tired of losing and was happy to be a part of something that could last. She knew if she didn't kill Michonne and Rick, somehow they'd come for the CRM, and that's why she drew up the secret file. She thought that she had chosen a side and her death would be worth it, but in these last moments, she thinks back and reflects on all of her different lives. She talks about Gabriel and how he had already shown her who she really is, and that she has found and accepts her answer now. She is a good person. She chooses to be humane. She then reveals where the secret file is, in her room at the Cascadian base, telling them to destroy it and go home, and the CRM will bring the world back without them. Jadis wants assurance that they won't go after the CRM, but Michonne says that they are going to stop the CRM because it's not the answer, and they must end. Jadis then explains she wished that she died an artist. It was never about survival in that life, it was just about truth. And this is now the end of her story. It's her piece. She hands over the ring that Gabriel gifted her years ago and tells Rick that Gabriel wanted to give it to him. Jadis then asks Rick to do what he said he was going to do all this time. And with a heavy heart, Jadis looks into Rick's eyes as he does this to Jadis. Shot in the head by Rick Grimes. Her body is most likely left there to rot, as it's likely the CRM will have no clue where she is, and therefore she wouldn't have been able to have a burial. R.I.P. Jadis, aka Anne, aka Warrant Officer Stokes. Okay, wow. So Jadis was actually a pretty major character, spanning not one, not two, but 3 TV series. She is one of the most flip-floppy characters there is. She's a bad guy, then a good guy, then a bad guy, then a good one, then a coward, then a sad one, then a good guy, then a bad guy, then a mixed bag, then a genocidal maniac, and then finally in the end, her good shine through. I mean, she still did like genocides and stuff, so really, ultimately, she was a terrible person in the end. I personally have mixed feelings on Jadis or Anne. I mean, in some respects, I like her character a lot, but there's some things in the writing surrounding her that just makes no sense to me. One, I don't care how much you like art, there ain't no way she's gathering over 200 people to live in the dump. 2, why did the CRM, a group so hellbent on security, decide to trade with a group of people who live amongst trash? And 3, I get why Gabriel never mentioned anything about the helicopter, but why does Negan never mention it? Anyway, still, there's great things about her character. She's funny at moments for sure, she's ruthless, and it's also super cool that she spans 3 shows, even though covering her character made me have to watch The World Beyond again. Disgusting. Anyway, tell me your thoughts on Jadis/Anne, and I'll see you in the next Walking Dead character profile, which will be on some more characters who crossed into The Ones Who Live, but originated in the main series. Anyway, thanks for watching. Goodbye.
Shit haircut.